I really wish we can talk about on air what we were discussing while we were not break, but interestingly, it's really about nation building, and that's what this program is about, irrespective of the divergent opinion. It's all about to educate you and all of that. Sale of national assets is what we're discussing tonight. Mr. Johnson is the MD Cowrie Assets to my right, and Honorable Solomon Edoja is a former lawmaker. And we're looking at what should be done. Is this what should be done? When should it be done? And how should it be done? With what intention should we do this? You were on before.
Yes, and one of the things I want to have as a caveat is this. We must avoid the option of adopting economic policies in silos. The option of selling the assets is one of the several things we need to do together. Selling assets is one. Raising loan from our bilateral and multilateral partners is another thing. Releasing liquidity from the treasury single accounts is another thing.
That's
reducing interest.
God forbid.
I'm coming.
Releasing money from the treasury back to the swindlers and.
So what is it doing in there?
We need it there because in fact, if we don't even have now we cannot even pay.
I'm going to tell you.
Civil servant, we can't pay no.
I'm going to tell you something.
You are raising another very critical topic.
We cannot. The TSA must not be gone back to. If you want to form a bank, you look for your own money. Okay. Not government money.
Let me just.
I have business. If I'm running my business, I need my money. Not relying on somebody's deposit to run my money. That's what the banks were.
Okay, let me tell you what happened.
Tell me what happened. You know, the TSA must not go back to the bank.
With the size of this economy,
yes,
it's about nominal value of this economy is about 97 trillion.
Yes.
Today, TSA. Let's assume that only 3 trillion was sterilized, and those monies are with central bank. The monies, if they had remained with the banks, and the federal government.
What with the bank? What was the bank
these monies belong to MDAs. The likes of Nigerian Post Authority, Nigerian NNPC, and all the rest.
Yes.
The monies have. Banks are arbitrage institutions.
Yes.
They take deposit from the surplus units and lend to the deficit units. The agencies of government are part of the surplus units that deposit money with the banks. From those deposits, the banks create loans. The loans work for the economy because the loans create productive activities. So if we take 3 trillion, for instance, and we assume that only 3 trillion was sterilized, you know what would have happened? The federal government could have given an instruction as look, the balances held by banks that belong to the MDAs, the banks must pay an interest of 5%. That 5%, the federal government, within that September, when that money was sterilized, now would have earned 150 billion.
And who pays?
The banks.
It's not the banks, the ultimate consumer.
I'm heading to the ultimate consumer. I'm heading to the ultimate consumer.
Whatever they are going to manufacture, include those components of those.
I'm heading there.
But the economy is already galvanized by whatever structures those monies come to do.
See,
don't also forget that.
Let us see how the economy works.
No, those money belongs to MDA.
Hold that point. You're going to explain that.
Hold on. Those money belongs to MDA. The MDA also need to be liquid to be able to pay their, meet up with their obligation. They need to pay their contractors. Are you aware that before the last regime, fertilizer that we imported into this country is amounting to 65 billion naira, were unable to pay for them because there was no money to back up all the money that were in TSA that they thought was there and they were in banks fizzled out. So there is no.
That's control. That's even control issues.
Yes.
Those are control issues, and that doesn't take away the merit of what those monies do when they are with deposit banks.
No.
So let's just.
Take
us again through that.
Yes,
I want to. How economies get galvanized all over the world.
Absolutely. Yes. So that's 3 trillion.
Yes.
The government would have earned 150 billion.
Yes.
The 150 billion could have done the road from Onitsha to Enugu.
Yes.
Repair that road that is a debt trap. Mm-hmm. That 1 year income that is lost. When the banks have this money and they're paying interest of 5%, the government can also still go ahead and say you are going to lend out this money only for developmental purposes, and you will only charge 10% interest. The banks will lend this money to small and medium scale enterprises, 3 trillion. And charge only 10%, which means that these people are enjoying some subsidy from government. I'm coming.
I can't understand this kind of economy. No, but just wait. I did business administration. Now, you have money. You deposit your money with banks.
The banks will use your money to lend.
The bank use your money to lend.
Yes.
In this case, this money belongs to MDA, belongs to ministries. Listen now, they are a product of a budget. Mm-hmm. Those money are a product of a budget for rules, for this, for payment of wages and salary. You give them to, you now deposited in the bank. Rather than construct roads, bridges, and all of that, you now service the central bank some interest, and then you loan the money out. And then when it is
when
time,
I call for that money, you're going to give it to me.
You cannot.
That's
because
what matters.
No, that's what
why.
control measures. When I call for that money, I'm going to get it.
See, listen now. I'm only telling you. See, we are
Do you
not
keep your money with
Yes,
banks? Do
basically.
you keep your money with banks?
Listen now.
Do you keep your money with
Don't
banks?
they borrow it?
Do you keep your money with banks?
I can borrow money to the bank. I will
Do you
not
keep
get-
your do you have current account balance?
Are you not getting this? Let's get this thing. Let's situate it very well. The money you are talking about is public money, and the MDAs are managing this money on behalf of the public. If they keep such money in central bank, the money has we know central bank is also a public asset. But if they send it to Solomon's bank, and Solomon pay interest and then lend this money out, when you need to pay salary, story will start in this country. When you need to pay pension, story will start in this country. When you need to construct roads and pay contractor, Julius Berger was old, virtually almost 212. Borrowing such money out, you know the statement that comes out suggests that we have idle money not doing anything for this economy.
So all of this,
That's the way we are now.
All of this
Yes.
came about. I am very aware that we digress. All of this, yes, came about because he mentioned TSA
Yes.
as one way to free
Liquidity, to restore liquidity into the economy.
So let's just go on to the other options.
Yeah, go to the other.
So I've mentioned the issue of trade, and that thing is that monetary policy authorities have to reduce the cash reserve ratio and the monetary policy rate.
Yes.
They need to drop the cash reserve rate from between 2.5% to something like 15%. That will inject additional liquidity into the system. If we don't have liquidity in the system, you're not going to catalyze economic activities. We need naira liquidity and dollar liquidity. Naira liquidity will come from TSA and reduction in cash monetary policy rates and government expenditure in terms of budget disbursement. The dollar liquidity will have to come from either we borrow from our multilateral and bilateral partners, or we sell some of our assets. Today, we are not in a position to attract foreign portfolio investors and foreign direct investors until we stabilize the exchange rate. That stability is required before we become attractive to foreign portfolio and foreign direct investors. And the only way we can stabilize it is we must have dollar liquidity. Dollar liquidity will come from two sources I mentioned.
If you are just coming to Nigeria, I will take it from you that you have been living abroad, and now that you are in Nigeria, you find these things you cannot, they don't add up.